Hello, everyone. This is Sifu Slim. I am the author of Sedentary Nation, a book that takes a look back at physical movement from the original hunter-gatherers, the upright walkers, all the way until the couch, desk, car potatoes and the counter potatoes. Some people think that if you work at 7-Eleven or the post office, you're not being sedentary. But the truth is that's sedentary behavior. You are standing, but you're still sedentary. Physical movement, that is what replaces being sedentary, physical movement. And that's the subject of book number 2, which is The Aging Athlete. And so these are stories from athletes that take us from when they were little kids. Here's not a little kid, but an 18-year-old big kid, one of the biggest kids in the county where he grew up in Gary, Indiana. And here he is, Randy Beisler, former NFL player number 3 draft pick from 1966. And that's him at age 66. And so he's still doing physical movement. And on the line with me is a PhD engineer, Stanford grad, originally from Chicago, now living in California. And that's Dick Wullaert. And Dick Wullaert is about 80. Dick, did you turn 80 yet?
No, I'll be turning 80 this year. So I'm 79 and a half now.
79 and a half. And Dick, you still play basketball with 20-year-olds. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. Well,
And
20-year-olds to 60-year-olds, but I like guarding young kids.
And you told me a story, Dick, about somebody who was doing all the fancy moves in front of you, and you were guarding them up at the post, or so the top of the key, and you said, that's fine, you can keep doing all that, but you're still not going to go around me with any ease. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. You know, a lot of these people, dribble between their legs and do all kinds of things. It's a little harder to guard them, but they still got to get by you.
What's the secret? And even back when you were a young guy, what's the secret to guarding somebody and keeping that concentration on figuring out what your body has to do so you can follow that other person's body and his intentions or her intentions?
Yeah, well, it's moving your feet and not sticking your arms out. You stick your
Moving
arms
your
out.
feet.
Yeah, you're moving your feet. I was watching some of the younger guys, and reminded me of my younger days where and if you watch the college kids, I mean, the really good defenders, they move exactly the same as the offensive player, bumping him a little bit, but not allowing him to get around. That's the secret, footwork.
Got it. The question I have is, you went into engineering way back when you were in your 20s. Why did you go into engineering?
Yeah, I was always, I guess, interested in technical things, and I don't know. I guess I basically am a researcher. I mean, I've always been a researcher. I still am a researcher. And I started out actually in chemical engineering undergraduate. And after the first year, I transferred to metallurgy. And I've been in metallurgy or material science ever since. And I really love it. I like studying materials, metals. I like mining. It just resonates with me.
So along the way, you got into health, and if you had a switch flipped way back when from some teacher in bio or a health class that you took, or if your parents or siblings were into health, could you have gone in the direction of studying health way back when?
Yeah. Oh, well, where I grew up and stuff was blue collar worker, and people, weren't into that like they are here out in California. So I really didn't get into health until probably the late 70s, early 80s, when I was a pretty high level tennis player and well, let's put it this way. When I was in school, I used to pitch. So I kind of wiped out my right arm, the joint.
The rotator cuff?
Yeah, right. And it started to act up again in tennis. And so I went to this doctor, and he said, I can give you a shot of a steroid, or I can get rid of your problem. And that was my first introduction to maybe there's a way by changing your diet and other things rather than taking a shot to cure a problem. That's how it got started.
Did you listen to the doctor about the shot and pursue that?
No, I didn't do shot. I don't do shots.
How did you know back in the day not to do that and not to listen to a medical practitioner?
I don't know. I just like to sort of be responsible for myself, take care of myself, and the use of drugs is like the shortcut.
Did you know anything about inflammation in your days of playing high school sports and then tennis later on?
No, I didn't. I really didn't get into it till I was probably 30 years old or so. So
And
when
why?
I was in high school and stuff, I was doing all the bad things, drinking Pepsi and big milkshakes and, all that stuff.
All right, well, I'm going to go to a little visual here. This on the bottom, take a guess what I have in this water to give it this color and what's in the bottom floating around.
But to me, it reminds me of mushrooms. I drink stuff like that with medicinal mushrooms.
Oh, good. I don't know much about medicinal mushrooms, but in here,
yeah,
I have ginger powder, turmeric, and cinnamon, and all of those are antibacterial. Cinnamon helps regulate your blood sugar level and improves the taste. And there are many good things in there, and it's building up my immune system. And what would you say to an athlete? What do you think an athlete would say right now at age 16? And if you showed them this in one hand and a sports energy drink like a Red Bull in one hand, and then on the table you put down some Pepsi, Coke, or some limeade type stuff, what do you think they would go for last out of all those three or four options?
Yeah, the one in your hand. Although I understand if they get through college and they start getting into pros and they learn that they've got to take care of their body or their career's over, a lot of them are changing.
You think people like this Tom Brady, the quarterback, who's got a very special diet and has been in the league for, I think, 10 or 12 or 15 years. I can't remember how many years. It's been a long time. I think 2001 or 3 is when he started. So coming up on 15, 16 years, and he's got this special diet. And when you go out to a happy hour with him and offer him a drink, he says, I'm drinking water, or I'm drinking tea. And they say, why is that? This could be in the off season. And he responds, because I'm in training.
Yeah, he's getting good publicity. They've tried to kind of hassle him, but I've seen recent college graduates going in like the NBA, and apparently when they have their little meetings for the rookies, they point out a lot of things. Don't get into compromising situations, don't get into bar fights, but they also say if you want to stay in this league, it'd be a good idea to change your diet.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the 70s, Phil Esposito from the Boston Bruins, world champion, highest goal scorer for a long time, on the team with Bobby Orr. And he says these guys on the Boston Bruins used to go out and party. And that was the norm for professional athletes in the 60s and 70s. Along the way, that changed. And but these guys did have a good time. And now you could say on the one hand, if they fought hard on the ice, on the field, whatever they were doing, and they had that downtime away from the game, you could think that their mental energy could leave the stress of the field, of the training, all these types of things. So there actually might have been a benefit to partying where there was an anti-benefit, a hindrance to their performance was the recovery. So if you want your body to recover, you don't want to give it alcohol to process in less sleep. Going to sleep at 4 a.m. on a binge partying night in Boston is probably not good for your recovery. Share some thoughts, if you would, on the old days of being an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, that was true. I don't know when it really changed. All I know is that when I watch some of these senior Olympics and, people in their 70s and 80s, the ones that are still doing it aren't partying too much. Okay. I think it's, well, I go to the Y all the time, and there are people even in the 80s. They play basketball too. That we call them the old timers. Okay, they're 75 to 85. They play earlier, and they play half court, and so they're still playing. They're still moving around, but they're not up to full court stuff. it's really easy in a way, and I'm sure you know this, is that as you get older, if you get out of shape for whatever reasons, it's harder and harder to get back in shape. So the best thing is don't get out of shape.
Yeah, the psychological part of fitness. So people, when they think of me, many times they think of a person who exercises every day. And I guess that would be an easy thing to remember because it's probably abnormal to have someone who started when they were 6 and not miss days from age 6 to age 54. So they associate
Oh,
that
yeah.
with me, and I associate that with me too. But if I consider myself, I really think that I am a wellness person, and fitness is just a component of my wellness. So it's just like I eat well, I take naps, I go to sleep early, drink
Right.
lots of fluids, and I learn from people like you and other people about turmeric and about mushrooms I'll look into. So I'm always learning. So wellness is really what I'm about. And if I'm abusing myself with my fitness and I'm not recovering properly, I'm going to back off of parts of that. I'm going to still do some sort of stretching, some sort of movement, jacuzzis, swimming, whatever I can do to rehabilitate, because sometimes your body just is not recovering very well for a variety of reasons. But
Well,
that's what I would say. I am more of a wellness person whose default setting is to do fitness no matter what.
yeah, I think I agree with that. I got into wellness probably in the early 80s, working with a Dr. Jensen. And his big theory was that all diseases and problems start in the colon. So you better detox. He was pretty well way ahead of his time. That's a very popular thing now, is to detox. And we're finding with the stuff that I use, what we call functional water or the mushrooms. I'm into a new thing now called hydrogen water or hydrogen gas inhaler, and it's phenomenal. Hydrogen is probably the perfect antioxidant. Anyway, we're finding that when we give people sufficient doses of those things, they have a pretty good detox reaction. And so wellness is the thing, detoxing is the thing, sleep is the thing. If you do all those things, it's a lot easier to work out.
What is so great about life? Why would someone like you want to be a well person and have more longevity? Perhaps there's two different things. I mean, you want to live well in the years you're here, but some people want to live a longer life. So what's so great about life that would make someone like you want to take care of themselves?
Yeah, well, I don't like to be dependent on anybody, and I like to be able to do what I used to do, and so far I'm still doing that.
So that's helping you live and be well. So what's so great about life that you want to be here to keep going?
Oh, pretty much my my inquisitiveness or curiosity. I'm a constant student. I think that's really what it is. I'm starting another company at my age, so you know.
So you have an inquisitive mind and the intellectual stimulation, the intellectual curiosity, and the will to do new things and do them as well as you can. That's motivating you to turn the page and wake up tomorrow and be excited about your future.
Yeah, I really think that's probably what keeps me young, is that I don't think I'm any older. I don't think about age even. I'm on the basketball court. I'm just like I used to be. Obviously, I'm not. I'm a little slower, but it's the mental attitude.
So yeah, so your basketball translates in the way that you run your life. You show up, you do what you do with the team, you're prepared, and you run through your program. And that sounds to me like what you do with your life.
Yeah, and I try not to waste time on things that aren't beneficial to me, to my wellness. Um, yeah, I guess I'm very selective in how I spend my time.
I'm going to show you a couple more visuals here. So this gentleman, Bob's Red Mill, we probably have seen him. I don't know much about Bob. Let's see if I got a picture of Bob. There he is, right there. And this company has been around for decades. And what I'm enjoying here is a 10-grain pancake and waffle whole grain mix. And the pancakes I've made with this, and then I'm using almond milk in the batter and some good organic eggs. And then some olive oil is my something else I put in there to make sure it doesn't stick. And then I'm cooking those up and with some eggs and some vegetables, and it's been pretty tasty. But since I am more or less attempting, I'm not completely anti-grain, but I'm attempting to go minimal grain, because I think we overdo it on the grains. There's wheat and almost everything that we buy that's a manufactured product. There's either wheat or corn in it. And so now I looked up the other day at the store, and I found Bob's Red Mill superfine almond flour from blanched whole almonds. So I'm not saying this is the best of all worlds here, but I'm going to give this a shot. I do have to mix in the things to turn it into pancake batter, like the baking soda and a little bit of salt. I think you have to mix in salt to activate the baking soda. If it's just taste, I'll probably won't put the salt in there. But I'm going to give those a shot and see if I can make pancakes that at least work. I don't need to have a taste that's phenomenal, but at least a pancake that holds its form and does what a pancake does and looks and moves like a pancake moves. So I'm going to give that a shot. What are your thoughts on diet and just the idea of breakfast, which has been transformed from cereal, which a lot of us kids grew up on back in the day, to different types of things like eating vegetables in a breakfast setting, like the Vietnamese and other cultures do?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I, over the years, have way back when I was having the shoulder problems and stuff, the big thing was to get off dairy products and sugar. And fortunately, with my ex-wife, she was really into it, so I had a pretty good diet. But I still love bakery goods. I used to eat a lot of bread. I used to think that to eat, had to make a sandwich with bread. I've got off all that, so I tried to get away from gluten, except I was doing rye. And lately, I was reading a book called Autoimmune Fix by I'm looking at his book now, Tom O'Brien. Really, really good book. And he also
You want to hold that book up for us?
Yeah, hold on, I'll get it. Anyway, I got into this guy because I saw a YouTube video, really good. And then Dr. McCullough had an interview of him, and then he did a 6 or 7 part series, kind of like, do you remember the series that came out? It was called The Quest for Cure for Cancer by Ty Bollinger?
I do.
Yeah. Well, he did the same sort of thing. He had every night a free video. This is the book. That working okay?
Yeah, can you go a little lower so we can see the author's name?
How about that?
Yeah, Tom O'Brien. Hold that up again, please. You have to speak while you hold it up so it activates your screen.
This is the book, and go on YouTube. You can see some of the videos, and if you're really interested, you can buy a whole DVD set. The interesting thing about this book that convinced me to get off of gluten is the effect of wheat and gluten on the colon. And they've done studies where they actually instrument the colon and they watch what happens when you eat gluten. And it goes in there and it attacks the colon lining and causes what's called leaky gut. And when you have leaky gut, then all the proteins and stuff get into your blood, causes all kinds of problems. And for example, I was reading this, and my sister has Hashimoto's syndrome. Hashimoto's thyroid issue. And I'm reading in here, and it says there's what's called the obvious wheat-related gluten allergy, but there is sort of another version of it, and I don't remember the details, but basically those people that have that kind of allergy, about 80% of them have Hashimoto's. So I sent this to my sister. She's not eating gluten anymore, and it turns out some of her siblings or her kids actually have gluten sensitivity. So I'm trying to avoid gluten, and so I eat quinoa. I eat some rice, things like that, non-gluten. And I've noticed it. You know, I think it's like to say sometimes you have to stop something for a while. So I didn't eat it for a while, and then I decided to have I had some rye crackers left over, and I noticed a toxic headache. So yeah.
Yeah, so some people understandably make an excuse that goes something like this. I eat all the bread I want and all the pizza that I want, and I'm still working 10 hours a day in my job, and I still feel fine and play golf on the weekends, and I'm a 5 handicap, right? So that's a common excuse that someone will make because it's not easy to change what you're currently doing. And if you look in the mirror and you listen to your body, you may feel fine. So I get where they're coming from. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But what happens with what you're talking about, these autoimmune situations and leaky gut, is, to me, it reminds me of pancreatic cancer, how pancreatic cancer works historically. I haven't read it in over a year, what's happening with the diagnosis, but it would take 20 plus years for it to manifest into something that they could test for. So you did have it, you just didn't know for 20 plus years, and then all of a sudden you have it. And when you did get it, there was no remedy for pancreatic cancer, according to Western medicine, and maybe even according to many of the alternative people. So you didn't have long to live. So in my book, I say, pack your bags now if you've got pancreatic cancer, because your flight leaves very soon.
Yep.
And I mean that to a wake-up call. I don't mean to just besmirch anyone with cancer, but you really want to have a wake-up call. And being in families like you and I probably grew up with, our cousins or aunts and our grandparents somewhere in the vicinity where we spent time with them, and we would get the lessons handed down from the generations. We didn't have Dr. Mercola. We didn't have easy access to all of this modern wellness information. So we learned very handily from our ancestors, and they could take us aside and have those long talks with us and reprimand us for our behavior. So I think that some of those things, that's what I'm trying to do with some of my YouTube videos, is give people a wake-up call with love, with compassion, with empathy, but really bring in the information and hold them by the collar and shake some sense into them.
Well, the point you made is exactly the point in this book by Tom O'Brien. And what he said is, okay, you guys in their 20s or people in their 20s, you want to eat gluten and all that, fine. It goes down and it irritates the hell out of the intestinal linings, but you're young and strong, and it does it for an hour or two, and you recover. But then you keep doing it in your 20s and your 30s, and pretty soon, either through other issues or a depleted immune system or whatever, it catches up with you. It's like you say, at 20 years, pretty soon it can't repair itself anymore. The leaky gut is permanent and you got problems. But it's the same thing. He said that's what happens in your 20s and 30s. You can get away with it. Maybe your 40s, but by the time you're 50, you're probably going to notice it.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the autoimmune. And so, people, if you went to a conference 30 years ago with 300 people and you'd said, raise your hand if you have an autoimmune condition, very few hands would go up 30 years ago. But if you went to one today with 300 people, the kids of the people from 30 years ago who are in their 20s through 50s, if you ask them that question, you would be surprised you wouldn't, but many people would be surprised at how many hands would go up with people with autoimmune conditions. And some, according to Western medicine, like the thyroid conditions like Hashimoto's, once your thyroid shuts down and can't do what it does, you have to take thyroid medication just to live, basically, for the rest of your life, according to many of the practitioners. And I hope that will be remedied. And maybe there are people out there right now who've already got ways around that. But I know many, many people in my sphere who have different autoimmune conditions, and there's a list that even goes beyond those. What's the one with the tick bite?
Lyme's disease.
Lyme's disease. So, I mean, on, and candida, all these things, it's just your body reacting and telling you that it's not happy. And that manifests in something where your body doesn't function. It goes to your brain doesn't work well. And then you start losing your friends because you've got this aberrant behavior and no one really wants to hang out with you when you need all the assistance and the TLC that you can get. No one wants to be with you because you're a mess from mind to head to toe.
I think the broader thing about the autoimmune thing is really inflammation. It's a lot of people tend to accept the fact that inflammation is really the cause of all chronic diseases. And so you really have to keep the inflammation down. And toxins cause inflammation. It doesn't matter whether it's Fukushima radiation or cell phones or your diet or chemtrails or whatever's going on. We're just bombarded. And that's why you sort of toxins, and pretty soon they get up to here, and then you get allergies, you get autoimmune diseases, you get cancer, you get all kinds of things. So you really got to try to reduce the toxic load on your body.
When we talk about health, we can go back to kids, and it was common in my day, and probably in our grandparents' day, to have a child, a newborn, with colic, and that was, you can read that in the literature. You probably, not Tom Sawyer perhaps, but someone like Tom Sawyer, you might find a reference to his sister or little brother who was newborn or 6 months old who had colic, right? And it was a big worry because their intestines weren't functioning properly, and the parents were worried. They knew that if your intestines were not evacuating things through your colon properly, that was a big sign. We worried about that for centuries and for millennia before that. But nowadays, you talk to people and you see what they eat, and then in the bathroom they're having problems with their excrement, and it's a mess basically. But that's normal to them. The new norm for them is to have a messed up bowel movement, and so
Yep.
that's a strange occurrence. But maybe you could weigh in on that.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of interest right now on the microbiome or the gut bacteria. This is what I got into back in the 80s. I think it pretty much saved my life because, again, I was going through arthritis and all kinds of problems. And I went down to Dr. Jensen's ranch, and you basically went on a 7-day detox where you did enemas every day and you only had juices and stuff. And I was running 5 miles a day, and I never felt better, actually, because I was really toxic. And nowadays they're discovering the huge importance of the microbiome. I mean, there's all kinds of studies going on. And for example, even autism, if the mother has a weak microbiome, and if she has a cesarean birth where the baby doesn't get exposed to her microbes basically coming out at the vaginal canal, the baby starts with basically a reduced or less effective microbiome. And when they get vaccines, then the vaccine tends to overpower them. I mean, there's a lot of data on that. And so there's a definite relationship between the mother's microbiome and the baby's health. So it's really important.
You hear all about the gut health and the microbiome, and then someone's immune system, right? So a kid today coming out of a mom who's been tense, maybe had anxiety, and had the high glucose diet for her recent past, and then the kids enjoying that same diet, and I should say that negatively, is suffering, not enjoying, but the way they use the word enjoying is he's suffered and he's part of that diet, right? And so he's part of all the stress, and so he's predisposed to problems of development. And so you talk about the brain's developing, right. You talk about the immune system and the gut and all these things. And then in my generation and yours, we heard a lot about mothers who talked about the 10-hour delivery of a child, right? You don't hear that very much in my estimation. I haven't heard that very much in the last 20 years. So they see the problem. The obstetrician will see that problem, and if it's in a normal hospital setting under normal average conditions, they'll say, "We've got a problem here. We got to move the C-section," because no one in that hospital, I'm guessing, wants to be part of a 10-hour delivery for cost reasons, for exhaustion reasons. They want to get through their patient load that day, and so they're going to move right, I'm guessing, to the C-section or some other remedy to work through that problem instead of dealing with the 10-hour delivery, which may have happened back in your and my day much more commonly. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and what some people are doing now, if they have to have a cesarean, is they are basically implanting exposing the baby to the mother's microbiome anyway, because it didn't happen under a normal birth. The other thing I was going to mention is what the heck was it? Fecal implants. So there's been some serious benefits of people that have gastrointestinal issues of getting microbiome from another person. It's affecting things like obesity or Crohn's disease or some of these other intestinal problems, where they actually, on the FDA, I believe it has approved it, taking a fecal implant from another person and placing it in, and it's becoming a serious business right now. So
yeah, that would be done in like a suppository type of application.
Right.
Yeah, and if you watch the video on YouTube about Hitler's doctor, he was very interested in this and using that. They were going out and getting samples from the 20-year-old Wehrmacht soldiers, in their encampments, and getting the fecal matter and then using that. So I don't know if that's where it originated. I mean, a lot of medicine goes way back to the Egyptians, to the hunter-gatherers. Way back. I mean, when someone was dying, they tried different things, and on occasion they worked, and so they factored that into the way they practiced their medicine.
I hadn't heard that about the Hitler thing, but that's interesting. The other thing is there've been experiments where they've taken with mice, they've taken the blood of young mice and put it in old mice, and vice versa. And when you put the blood of young mice in old mice, they become younger.
Wow. That probably came out during the Tour de France doping scandal that they learned about.
I think it also has something to do with the vampire stories.
The vampire stories. That's right. Yeah. That goes back to the mythology of Bram Stoker, et cetera, which is, I think that's 1800 stuff, if I'm not mistaken. Vlad the Impaler, whenever he was around, that might go back prior to that. Maybe that goes back to the 1400s. I'll have to look that up. So I'm going to wind down with Dick, and I appreciate your input today and sharing some time with us, Dick Wullaert. Do you have any websites you want to list on YouTube?
We're right now they're down, but ultimately it'll be back up. It's called pleasehydrate.me. Please hydrate me.
Pleasehydrate.me. And that's about your water systems and your water research. Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's pretty much water science, water research, and it's heavily focused on improving hydration.
Fantastic. And so I'm going to put in a little announcement here. So I'm hoping to help people with books like Sedentary Nation, which is a wellness guide with lots of historical references and scientific references mixed in. And love for you to pick up a copy on Amazon and share with me your thoughts on that, folks. And same thing with The Aging Athlete. If you need motivation, or your dad or your brother or your mom needs motivation, there are a lot of good motivational stories in here about striving to keep moving and trying to be well despite the aging process. And that plays off on our mind, body, and spirit. It's hard to be positive in mind, body, or spirit unless you're taking care of yourself. And so let's promote that. And please join my YouTube channel. And we look forward to speaking with Dick again in the very near future. I am Sifu Slim, sifuslim.com, and you've heard Dick Wullert's website. And we welcome your input underneath this YouTube video. Have a great day. And we're going to get up and do some jumping jacks. If you'd indulge me, Dick, maybe you have to move your computer screen. And as we count 10 jumping jacks, you count 2, so the video will pick you up.
Yeah, can you see me still? Yeah. I guess so.
3.
What do you want to do? Jumping jacks? I do them every day. Yeah.
We'll do 10 on the count of 3, 2, 1. You count 2. 10, 9, 8, 7. Keep counting.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
couple of punches?
Hey, I do squats, burpees, and jumping jacks, the old stuff.
I'm sure Jacqueline would be proud of us.
Yeah, you would. You would.
Look forward to speaking with you soon, Dick. You have a great day and be well.
Okay. Thank you. You too.